Fighting game lore has always been insane in the best way possible, whether it's Guilty Gear, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, or even Tekken. It is always awesome to hear about this story. However, a lot of times, fighting games maybe don't have the most palatable versions of story modes. Sometimes it's just whatever snippets are done in arcade, whatever bits of dialogue you can get from that, or sometimes it's just a multi-hour long animated film you have to watch and don't get to play. But something Tekken 8 did really well was create an awesome story mode. Tekken 8 released just last week or so, depending on when this video releases, and one of the first things I did was play through the story mode. When I first picked up Tekken with Tekken 7 and played through the story mode there, I mostly enjoyed it. It was pretty fun going through all the episodes. However, there wasn't a whole lot of connection between them, and the piece of in between the episodes where you had a narrator kind of talk about what was going on was actually a little jarring a lot of the time. But then I played Tekken 8's story mode and I fell in love. So I do want to give a mild spoiler warning before I really get into it. I don't want to spoil a ton of the story, especially not the end. So anything in the back, like 1/3 of the story, I will avoid talking about other than how cool it is. And I'll mostly focus on that first mission that everybody can get to play in the demo, and maybe up to about halfway through the story. I do recommend you experience it for yourself. So if you've already got Tekken 8 downloaded and you haven't played the story mode yet, pause this one and then come back to it when you see how cool it is. So what exactly does Tekken 8's story revolve around? Well, to get into that, I would have to talk about a lot of the previous iterations Tekken lore, and I don't think I could do that super well, but I highly recommend you watch Clement J64's video on the insane lore of Tekken. It was super informative, and it got me up to speed on what all of Tekken lore was after I decided to take an interest in the series. However, to distill down what exactly Tekken 8 is about, it largely revolves around the existence of the Devil Gene, which Jin and Kazuya have. Anyone who has this Devil Gene is incredibly powerful when they shift into their devil form, and the story largely revolves around Jin trying to stop Kazuya, incredibly important now with Heihachi's actual confirmed death at the end of Tekken 7. The large crux of this entire storyline revolves around Jin, after, the whole World War III thing that he did, being pretty hesitant to use his devil powers in any regard because he regrets his past actions. So he tries to defeat Kazuya without relying on his devil powers too much, and lo and behold, Kazuya's devil powers do manage to completely overwhelm him. This is covered by the insanely cool first episode, which, if you haven't played it yet, load up the Tekken 8 demo, you get to play the first episode, and it's super cool. It's basically a Metal Gear Rising style action sequence that transitions into full-on fighting game sequences where you're playing as Jin, trying to beat the shit out of Kazuya. It's really cool. It's quintessential Tekken, but with even more over-the-top theatrics that are really cool to watch. Honestly, this first episode did an incredible job at setting the tone for this story. It, right out of the gate, is absolutely a blast, and honestly, the story lives up to the hype. I was really worried after the demo. I was like, oh wow, they really started this off with a banger. Are they going to be able to hold this hype all the way through the story? And they honestly managed to, especially the last half, the last act even of the story is so incredible. But let's talk a little bit more about what goes on in between the beginning and the end. So the first thing that Kazuya does to kick off the Tekken 8 story is he announces to everyone that he is once again starting up the King of the Iron Fist tournament, and that everyone who enters should be prepared to try their best or their country will be annihilated by Kazuya's devil powers. Pretty high stakes right off the bat, and the opening of this game does mostly revolve around all of the small qualifiers between all of the different combatants, and you playing as Jin starting to reckon with how he's not really as strong without his devil powers, but man, he sure doesn't want to do World War III again. And that's where a lot of this early game stuff revolves around. Jin in particular makes sure to talk with all of his friends like Lars and Leo and Elisa, and they all talk about how Jin is really the only one that can stop Kazuya, but he absolutely cannot do it with the way he's fighting now. So the entire beginning of the King of the Iron Fist tournament, between the qualifiers and the actual tournament, is Jin trying to get back to his old roots, his old fighting style. One of the really fun sections of the story mode is the actual King of the Iron Fist tournament. You actually do get to play as different fighters just from Jin. Granted, it's only for a round, but it's really fun to play as different characters in the story mode. I really enjoy it. However, after the first round of the King of the Iron Fist tournament, things start to go south. Everyone who's been involved in the story at this point, whether it's Claudio's group with Zhao Yu and Zafina and Kuma, or any of the other people like with Lars or Lee, they're all convening on this one Coliseum because Kazuya is about to fuck shit up. And I won't spoil what exactly happens, but it's incredibly cool. It's when the stakes of this story go from, oh, that's pretty bad, to, oh, fuck, everybody's fucked. We need to do something about this. And with that, the game starts its second half. A lot of it is Jin trying to return and reconcile with his past, going back to places where he used to train with his mother, and trying to unlock what exactly is the issue with his inner self. However, the other fighters besides Jin do actually get quite a lot of screen time here in one of my favorite missions. And I am gonna spoil this, like, middle of the pack mission. If you've played old Tekken games, if Tekken Force rings a bell, I would pause the video here and make sure you play up to that section. But anyway, so when this chapter opens, you get to play as all kinds of different characters in Dynasty Warriors Tekken. It's incredibly cool. You're just wiping the floor with a bunch of grunt enemies, which is my favorite thing in the world. And you even have a couple nice one-on-one battles like Victor and Dragunov, or my personal favorite, Leo vs. Azucena, where we learn that Azucena is only part of G-Corp because she really thinks it'll do better for her coffee promotion. This mission is really, really cool, and it's what sold me on Tekken 8's story being a step above anything else that I've really played. It reminded me a lot of the end of Mortal Kombat 1's story. Just a really cool set piece where you kind of get to see a lot of characters do their thing. It's very, very cool. And now we have to talk about the last part, which I won't be spoiling, so I'm just going to be talking incredibly, incredibly vague. This is when the story gets incredibly anime, for lack of a better word. A lot of what Jin does here is fighting his inner demon, no pun intended. And you get to see a lot of like inner struggle and emotional strife get transformed directly into fighting game mechanics, which is really, really, really cool. Another thing they utilize here very well, and it actually occurs early in the game as well, but it's very masterfully crafted QTEs. I'm a big fan of QTEs. Metal Gear Rising and Asura's Wrath are probably in my top 5 games of all time, and after Final Fantasy XVI's very cool QTE towards the middle of Act 1, I think Tekken really figured out what they wanted to do with this, and they get some really cheesy, very cool, very emotional QTEs that hit hard. One of the big things I was curious about after playing the demo was how the fuck is this meteor a stage in Tekken? How on earth does this fit into the story at all? And when I say it's nuts and crazy cool how they managed to do it, I really, really mean it. Everything from the final third of this story is just over the top bonkers, like Gurren Lagann level of escalation. It is absolutely nuts, and it's so much fun to play. I highly, highly recommend this story. And if you're an older Tekken fan, if you enjoy the older games, you're gonna love some of the callbacks they do in this latter half of the game. It really feels like they delivered on what they promised to with this battle between Kazuya and Jin, and it's super, super cool. I really want to reiterate once more that often in fighting games, story modes are not that palatable or not that engaging. But Tekken 8 has really, really blown it out of the water, and I highly recommend you, if you're someone who maybe doesn't play story modes in fighting games because you don't care and it's not that big of a deal, but you've got Tekken 8 downloaded, give it a shot, because it's a ton of fun.